In today's episode, we're testing out the Sony A7CII, and I'm hanging with my new friend, Tommy. So this is the Sony A7CII Mark II. It's got a 33 megapixel sensor, it's got 15 stops of dynamic range, and it has 7 stops of stabilization. When filming in 4K with the Sony A7CII Mark II, it films at an area equivalent to 7K with a full readout and no pixel binning, which is just insane. It's got 10-bit 422 internal recording with an all-intra compression option that's going to give you up to 600 megabytes per second. Also on this little compact camera, we got 4K 60 frames per second with a 1.5 crop and 1080 at 120 frames per second for your slow motion. We also got C-Log 3 and S-Cine tone. As well, a nice little feature that's not in the other Sony cameras like the Sony A7 IV is that you can actually load your own custom LUTs into the A7CII Mark II, giving you a nice graded look baked into your footage already. That's great if you don't want to spend time color grading in post and you just want to have great looking footage straight out of camera. We also got the crazy AI features for focus like human, animal, bird, along with some new options like animal, bird, insect, and car, train. It's just insane how easy they've made it to film with Sony cameras and their focusing system. As well, the Sony A7CII Mark II has advanced subject recognition where it automatically estimates where the person is. For example, if they turn their back or they're wearing a helmet or wearing glasses, it's still gonna recognize the shape of the human being and know where to focus, which is just unbelievable because back in the day, even if you did have eye focus, but you're wearing glasses or you put a helmet or you turned your head, all of a sudden it might not focus anymore. But now with this advanced recognition, you're gonna be fine. Also similar to the features we saw in the ZV-E1, this has auto reframing. So essentially if you're filming by yourself and you want the camera to follow you, you can put this on a tripod, film in 4K, and it's gonna crop in a little bit in order for it to follow you when you're walking or moving and having your head centered in, which is really cool. It's like having your own personal camera assistant with you at all times. Basically, this is the most advanced, compact, hybrid-friendly camera that you can buy, and it only costs $2,200 US, which is significantly cheaper than many of the other camera bodies from Sony, like the A7 IV or the A7S III. Hey guys, it's Future Thepo here. I have to pause the video for just a moment because I have really exciting news that you're gonna wanna hear about. I just launched my interest page for my very first live cohort-based course called Creator Autonomy. It's gonna be 3 weeks long and it's gonna cover everything that you need to know if you wanna start your own personal brand. Creator Autonomy is for you if you wanna start a personal brand but have no clue where to start or where to go. If you want to learn how to consistently create high quality short form and long form content, and if you want to learn how to monetize your personal brand and make a full-time salary. So if Creator Autonomy interests you, make sure you click the link in my description and fill out the interest form so that you can be the first ones to hear about enrollment because there's going to be limited spots. All right, sorry for disrupting the enjoyment. Back to the video. So would I switch from my trusty workhorse, the Sony A7S III, and switch over to, for example, the Sony A7CII Mark II? Well, that's what I was on a mission to find out with my good friend Tommy. Tommy and I spent the afternoon on a moody day here in Finland shooting with both the A7S III and the Sony A7CII Mark II just to see the comparison between the two cameras. Remember, this is again very unscientific, but I just wanted to take it on a real life situation, shoot with both cameras, and see what were the results. First, I want to check out the skin tones between the Sony A7CII Mark II and the A7S III, because for me, skin tones are really important in my footage, because I'm often filming people or myself. And here's the footage from the Sony A7S III, and here's the footage from the Sony A7CII Mark II. And here's what the footage looks like side by side. Looking closely at the footage, it looks like the A7S III has a little bit more of a magenta tint to the skin tones, whereas the A7CII Mark II actually looks really good and natural. So points to the A7CII Mark II for skin tone. Next, I did some stabilization tests because if you guys know me, I never use a gimbal. I literally film everything just handheld, so that's why it's really important to have great stabilization in my cameras. So here's the footage from the Sony A7S III. And then the A7C Mark II. To me, both cameras look pretty stabilized. I can't really see too much difference in the footage, so that's a good thing because I've really enjoyed the stabilization in the A7S III, so if it's similar in the A7C Mark II, I'm happy. I did then try to push the boundaries by chasing Tommy with the Sony A7C Mark II, and there was quite a lot of shake, and that's to be expected when you're running at full blast behind someone, but I just wanted to include that to give you guys some laughs. Here we have footage of the Sony A7C Mark II at 4K 60 frames per second with the 1.5 times crop. And then here's a clip of the 1080 120 frames per second. Nice buttery smooth slow motion, but it is a little bit of a shame that when you're filming 4K, you have a 1.5 times crop. I like the fact that when I'm shooting with the A7S III, I can film
works definitely right away
4K
when I'm in auto mode and just have like auto settings
with the full readout or full crop. So that is a little bit of a shame with the A7C Mark II. I didn't shoot too many photos with the cameras, but I did take a few portraits. I wanted to see basically would I notice something different from a 12 megapixel camera to a 33 megapixel camera, because often that is the biggest criticism for the A7S III if someone is a hybrid photographer videographer. I personally haven't had any problems with the 12 megapixels, so I couldn't see that I would have any problems with this camera. I think they're both going to be great. And looking at the photos, they look really similar. I don't see too much difference, and I think both cameras work great for me when it comes to shooting photos. Now at this point, many of you guys are probably wondering, would I actually jump from the Sony A7S III to the Sony A7C Mark II? And if I'm honest, I probably wouldn't switch. I just don't feel like this camera has enough features that are better than my A7S III to make the jump. Yes, this camera did have better skin tones, but then things like the 4K 60 frames per second at a 1.5 crop, that's not really good for the way I shoot. Or even something like the compactness of this camera, for someone it might be great, but for me, it feels almost a little bit too small. There is a little grip that you can add to the bottom so it makes it a little bit bigger to hold, but then at that point, it almost would just feel like the same size as the A7S III. Lastly, for someone using this kind of camera on a professional level, they might not like the fact that there is only one memory card slot. For example, if you're shooting weddings and you only have one memory card and something happens to that memory card, you're gonna be in big trouble. So if you're doing professional paid work, then it might be really important to have 2 card slots. So if this isn't gonna replace my A7S III, then who is this camera for? Well, I think the A7C Mark II definitely has a place for those people who maybe have been shooting with mobile phones or an APS-C camera, but they wanna upgrade to a full frame camera, but they don't at the same time have a budget like the A7S III. This camera is that happy medium in between. At $2,200 US. You're getting a lot of great features in a very small, compact, hybrid-friendly camera setup. So there definitely is a place and market for this camera, and if you are in that situation where you're like, I've been shooting with my mobile phone like the iPhone, or I've had an APS-C camera, but now I wanna take that next step to the full-frame cameras, then I think this camera would be great for you. Honestly, back when I started, if I would have been able to get all these camera features in a camera for only $2,200 US, I would have just been mind blown because it just wasn't possible back then. So yeah, if you're interested in the Sony A7C Mark II, I'll make sure to link it below in my description. And as well, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe. I would love to have you enjoying more of my videos.